What if we could learn from outstanding leaders in business, sports, and education from some of the best voices in corporate America? Lighting the Path is a series of interviews with industry leaders whose stories highlight strategies that build purpose-driven cultures, engage and retain top talent, develop drivers that create high-performance teams, and connect people to the vision of your company. Join us to hear from game-changing, talented leaders whose paths make a difference at work and at home.
I'm excited about our guest today, Robert Jordan, for a lot of different reasons. One is we share a real similar passion for helping leaders understand how they're wired. Because if you're going to grow as a leader and increase your effectiveness, and you want to know how to deal with people better and be able to raise performance of the people you deal with, you got to know somebody like Robert. Because of the fact that you have to, if I want to manage you, I have to know how you're wired. But before I can do that, I have to be able to change myself and how I'm going to interact with you. And it all starts with self-awareness. And Robert, I think if you look at his pedigree, look at his background, this is a guy who's built a career on dealing with self-awareness when it comes to our leadership styles. He's a CEO of InterimExecs. What he does is he matches literally top executives of companies on a global basis. And not only that, but from he and Olivia Wagner wrote Right Leader, Right Time, Discover Your Leadership Style for a Winning Career and Company. And he has this leadership assessment that I'm going to have him tell us a little bit about, so you can understand the power of assessments and using an outside source to be able to help you look in that mirror that I talk about a lot. So, Robert, welcome. I've been looking forward to the day for a lot of different reasons, and our visit before we got started just amplified things. So, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Mike. Same back at you. I've been looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah. So, I got a question for you. I love to start by having people understand a little bit more about how you got to where you are today, without giving us Gone with the Wind, of course. But if you look at this journey that you've been on with helping leaders understand about their leadership style and where that turns into an asset, and also where the detriment comes into play, how did you end up there?
Well, my journey, we'll keep it real brief. I'm highly entrepreneurial. Early in my career, I hit on an idea and started publishing a magazine. It was the first magazine in the world that covered online services and eventually the internet. That sounds good and creative, but we were 5 years too early in a way. And so the beginning of online access was any mistake you can make in business, I made it. But then when the World Wide Web came around, I could do no wrong. And the business started doubling every year, and it put me onto the Inc. 500 list. And eventually I sold it to a big publisher. And that wasn't an event like, oh, gee, I'm going to go off to the beach. You can see me, and for your listeners who can't see, I'm very fair skinned. There's no tanning going on here. So
you don't spend a lot of time in Tahiti, is what you're telling me.
Yes. So you know that Zen expression, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Mm-hmm. Well, it happened fortuitously, coincidentally, however you want to put it. At the point when I was selling online access, I happened to run into an acquaintance, and he had this weird job title. He called himself an interim CEO. I think he probably was the first interim CEO in the US. And he handed me a new card. We were at a conference, and he handed me a new business card that said CEO of Yahoo. And that impressed me greatly, because I came out of the online world pre-internet. There was a small community, and we all knew that Yahoo and these other directories were going to go public on zero revenue, not zero earnings, but zero revenue. And so that impressed me greatly. And I essentially glommed onto this guy and said, "You're now my mentor." Came home from this quick talk with him and bought 2 domain names. I bought interimceo.com and interimcfo.com. And I hung out a shingle and started doing gigs. And that was my thing. And I liked doing that. And then social networks came around, MySpace, Facebook, LinkedIn. And I thought, I wonder how many people in the world are like me and my mentor. And so we launched the organization that became InterimExecs. And that went through a couple failed experiments. It started as a search engine. That didn't work. The world did not want free search. It moved to an association model. But the thing that really had legs, InterimExecs, as it stands today is it's a global matchmaker, and that works. And that's what I do.
All right. So if you look at this, so you're a connector. You assess the needs of organizations, and then based upon the needs that you have, you go through and look at the network of people that you know or have the ability to locate and be able to assess who has both technical background that can address whatever the needs of the company are, but more importantly, because you and I come from the same space, because of my background in running an executive search firm and a staffing organization. We know that the key aspect of it is not the intellect somebody brings in the door. It has to do with their culture shaping capability, which impacts their leadership style. What did you find when you talk to companies and you watch them? Assume a few companies make mistakes in their decision-making process on selecting people. Where did you find companies sort of fell short with either identifying or understanding this maybe a specific leadership style that would work most effective in whatever need they might have?
Well, it's a great question. You're getting into the research behind why we wrote the book, Right Leader, Right Time, which was this much more difficult thing around leadership style and matching based on chemistry and culture, as opposed to just these more obvious measures of, is somebody coming from the right industry and something like that. What we saw over the past decade, we had about 7,000 executives, hit our proverbial doorstep. And we started ranking and scoring and screening because interim was becoming its own career choice. So these were not traditional job seekers. These were executives who wanted to be project-based as their career. So we saw this pattern from the executive side. One pattern was not so good, which was the majority of executives showing up for us were having leadership journeys and careers that you would describe as okay, Mike, but you would not say they were exceptional. The flip side was that if you were looking at the top 2 or 3% of executives in terms of results, you'd say these are exceptional people. And there was this pattern, which is they tended to exhibit what we call leadership style. There was something more specific with them about having a process and an approach and a system. And we saw these 4 distinct buckets, if you will, and we called them style. And that's where we started getting a differentiating between what we call fixer, artist, builder, and strategist leadership styles.
Yeah, and so if you look at the different styles, this sounds like it's a marriage between mindset and the way somebody mentally approaches somebody. And I love what you talked about as far as process, approach, and system. Those are the 3 things that you tossed out. Give us an example of one of the styles you referred to and how it fits into those categories or how they match up.
Well, let's take a practical example. As you and I are recording, Mike, a couple months ago, an organization called FTX went into bankruptcy. It was one of the leading crypto platforms in the world. It's still big news. There are over 1 million creditors. The crypto market's imploded. It's a disaster. And not surprisingly, as soon as FTX went into bankruptcy, the court appointed a new leader, a new CEO. His name is John Ray. And not surprisingly, where was John before FTX? He was at Enron. So fixer is a kind of energy that needs to run into the burning building time after time. So John Ray was at Enron cleaning that up, and now he's at FTX, and that was absolutely the right decision. I could play off of our own title. He's the right leader at the right time. Because into that disaster, you need somebody who has this wiring that absolutely is drawn to crisis.
Right. Yeah. And boy, when you say that, I'm thinking of searches that I'd worked on in my career, helping companies make matches, where somebody becomes fixated on somebody's personality, or maybe even their pedigree and their name. Right. But the problem is they're like John, they're fixers. And the reality is there's not a burning building going on. It may be some type of turnaround, but it has to do with building out maintaining situations, taking what's there and being able to help people increase their productivity, but through more of a maintenance type of situation. So the fixer part of it's very, very short-lived. And now you have somebody who is not as engaged as you'd like, not because of their capability. It has to do with their style.
Yeah, you're reminding me. So we interviewed a lot of leaders for the book, and we didn't want to prejudice them. We had this set series of questions, and when we presented this framework, fixer, artist, builder, strategist, for short in the book, it's called FABS or FABS. And in the middle of the interview, we would hit all of these leaders and we would say, this is the theory we have, these 4 different styles: fixer, artist, builder, strategist, and would ask them, what do you think? Does this apply in your own career? And one of the leaders, incredibly accomplished guy, he heard it and he said, he said, I'm an investor in a company. He said, it's so interesting. He said, because he said, with this company, when they were in crisis, they thought they had the greatest leader in the world. He said, but we got past the crisis and then that guy didn't look so good. And I was like, okay, you see, there is something here, which is none of us are all things to all people.
No. And what happens is, depending upon the need, what happens is you have to identify somebody who not only can do the job, but is inspired to do the job.
Yes.
Because that's whenever you increase performance.
Yeah, that we're fans of this phrase, highest and best use. And, one of the key takeaways we hope for folks based on the research we've done is that exceptional leaders tend to reject more of what is not for their highest and best use. And it's really easy to say, and it's very hard to do. Very hard when you're early on in your career, for example, because you need the job, you need the money, your family's counting on you, your friends, everyone's looking at you. You can't, the concept you're going to reject something.
Right.
And yet, what we see, I know, Mike, you've seen this many times, is that somebody, as they're going through their career, this journey, they become more and more intentional. And at the beginning of your career, it can feel somewhat accidental, your first job or what you go into. But over the course of time, that's not the case. The more and more successful that you become, and you have a word over your left shoulder that I love, which is you talk a lot about unconditional confidence. And what occurs, for the leader over time is this increasing authentic form of confidence that is coming from being more and more true to what is inside themselves in terms of, I need to do this, not that.
Yeah.
Not that, not that, all of these things not to do, but they feel more and more, this still small voice in them, which says, this is what I need to do.
Yeah, man, it bends people from what I refer to from focus to hyper focus, is being able to understand the role of a leader in today's time. I've been really amazed, Robert, at how many, I keep looking for words that recycle. And the one that over the last probably 90 days for me that I keep hitting over and over again is the word, it's uncertainty. That right now, if you look at 2023, when this is being recorded, and you look at, so this is going to be the beginning of the second quarter of 2023. So we're past the fictitious, January turned the page, so let's start over again. So we're starting the second quarter. But this culture that people are really wrestling with is this atmosphere of, what do I do because of what they perceive as uncertain times, because of just dynamics and things that are shifting and changing? What does the future hold? You mentioned the word in here that I think is so important. It's popped up a couple of times in our conversation. The word is excellence. Is that this whole discussion, your book, your studies, is not about performance, but how do you help organizations and individuals operate at a level of excellence? And the word no is an important part of that, because what happens is you have to be able to have hyper focus to be able to take advantage of whatever resources you have and whatever time you have. And so that you can, a lot of the work I do centers around 3 levels of development, crafting a vision, building alignment, and championing execution. Those 3 stages. Now, a lot of us have a tendency to drive into this championing execution as fast as we can, but if you don't hit those first 2, the third one gets really, really wobbly. Well, in order to build alignment, you have to craft a vision of what is specifically on target, what is the high return results that people can operate with a level of excellence. Because if you're not at excellence today, there's a challenge. Now, that's a big, long setup. I apologize to go to this next thing I want to look at, is that you have this stage called an artist. And I was really intrigued when I saw that this was one of the styles, because I would love to draw. And I don't. But that's not your definition of artist, is it?
Well, it's interesting because I think there's a very strong crossover between the literal definition of artist, and we even take liberties in the book talking about real artists like Monet and those folks into what is innovative energy in organization and business. The reason we cross over there is because there are similarities in that well, to back up for a second, artist energy views the world as a blank canvas or a piece of clay to be molded. And if that fits you, you can't help but do it. It's a style that to us feels compelled, if you will. And that's not necessarily to the success of the artist leader in all cases. I say this personally as well, because I'm strongly artist leader. That's great in terms of my creativity. However, I am not the greatest operator on my team, the greatest at execution. And so knowing that and wanting to stay within my focus, I make sure I have teammates and folks I'm working with who are far better than me within their own capabilities. So the standout example of artist leader in the world, for better or worse right now, is Elon Musk. So if you look at Tesla, SpaceX, the Boring Company, I think they're incredible. I mean, Tesla is now over 20 years old, and 20 plus years ago, you could have looked at Elon Musk and just said, he's crazy. Because the internal combustion engine is a really efficient way for a vehicle to move around. And batteries were in no great shape. You couldn't go very far in a battery. But look at the world now. Every major automaker around the world is committed, and most governments are committed to eliminating the internal combustion engine from the world as major transportation. And I think you pretty much have one person to thank for that, which is Elon. That's artist energy. It is the renegade. It is the disagreeable person on your team. They don't necessarily get along with everybody, but they tend to come up with these discontinuous leaps, which, especially within a stagnant organization, you need it.
Yeah. So what's the difference then between artist and builder? Because there's a distinction in there.
So we know everybody is the builder. We all want to build our organization.
That's right.
We get that. And in that general term, it's great. We mean a specific kind of energy which takes the nascent product, service, team, client relationships, and is driven to market domination, to scale. And it does not necessarily mean world domination. If in your town, for example, there's one real estate developer and their name is everywhere. In your town, small, large, whatever, that's the organization you go for the home that you want to put up. That is builder energy, because it seeks for market dominance. In technology, what you see is you'll see these leaders where they will grow something and it will go public, and then that person leaves because they've achieved domination in that market, and they will tend to go to a new team, new product, new industry, new service, whatever it is, to start again, to go reach for market domination. Each one of these styles has its own mantra. And the mantra for Builder is market dominance.
Thanks for joining us today on Lighting the Path, Strategies for Tomorrow's Leaders. If anything in this podcast speaks to you, if I've challenged you, or if you want to spend time digging into this subject a little deeper, or if you disagree with me, reach out. My contact information is on our website, lightingthepath.net, or email me at mike@mikelejeune.com. Also, look for me on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect our networks. Keep lighting the path for those who choose to follow you. It's more than a responsibility. It's an honor.